Welcome to What Works for Women at Work. I'm your host, Evelyn Akselrod, and this season I'm talking to bold and accomplished women who are ready to spill the secrets to their incredible success. Come join me and unlock the doors to your leadership breakthrough. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to What Works for Women at Work. Today, I am with a new friend, Myisha Boyd. Myisha and I took the leadership executive coaching program together, and Myisha was my first peer coach. So welcome, Myisha, and thank you for all the coaching you've provided already.
Thank you, and same to you.
So Myisha, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am up to a lot, all the things it seems these days. So I have been on a journey. Like this year has been I guess, as cliche as it sounds, it's been a big transformational year for me. So I have a corporate background. I've spent a lot of time working in marketing and communications, and I kind of found my way into the DE&I space and the kind of more people side of business. And, I've loved all aspects of my career. I've really enjoyed everything that I've kind of done. But ultimately, in the back of my mind, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew that I wanted to own my own business and really do the meaningful, impactful work that I was very passionate about. And this has been a dream of mine with my two sisters for quite some time now, almost a decade, I think, when we kind of started this ideation of starting our own business. But again, life took over. We got kind of bogged down with our corporate careers, and I have four kids. I'm a mom, a wife. That's another big part of my role in life. And so all those things took over. And starting this year, I always give myself like a word for the year, what I'm going to focus on. And my word for this year was release. I told myself that I want to step into this year releasing things that no longer serve me so that I can actually open up space for things that do and ultimately build the life that I wanted. And with that came kind of two big things. One, as I said, right, like do away with the things that no longer serve me, but two, really think about like what my North Star is and what my purpose is and be starting to work in that direction. And the big revelation for that, I think, was my corporate job no longer served me. And I won't say it wasn't aligned to my purpose, but I knew that my purpose was so much bigger. And as, I think I'm sure other people have experienced, when you work in corporate, it kind of feels like you're in this box, and I really needed to break free of that. So I decided that I was going to walk away from my corporate job and just bet on myself. And it was really scary. Some days today are very scary still, but I'm also really super excited about it. And so my two sisters and I have launched our own company called Rock Paper Scissors Consulting. We are a social impact communications consulting firm. So really bringing together our backgrounds in DE&I, social impact, nonprofit leadership, along with communications, and kind of merging that all together and helping organizations build more authentic DE&I and social impact communication strategies, along with coaching nonprofit leaders as helping them establish their nonprofits, or grant writing. We do digital advocacy work as well. And then the third component is, as you mentioned, I got my certification in life leadership and executive coaching. And so a big passion of ours as well is coaching women of color and social impact leaders to be the change they want to see in the world. So it is exciting. Like I said, it's a lot of work, but that is where I'm at in my journey.
There are lots of big things, very big things, and
Yes.
meaningful things.
Yes.
So, the next question I have for you is, what's worked for you? But now I think that's a two-part
Mhm.
question. So you had an illustrious, really full corporate career, and then you're sort of made this transition, which is wow, an interview in itself.
Mhm.
But talk to us about that career and as you grew into it. What did you find worked for you to help you stay and succeed as long as you did?
Yeah, I think relationships played a big part in that, right? Building really meaningful relationships that were mutually beneficial. Kind of for me as a aspiring leader, I always wanted to look to leaders who I aspire to be like and really think like get to know their leadership style, get to know, understand how their minds work because everybody's so different. And it wasn't that I like wanted to be exactly like that leader, but I'm always, I always preach to people like build your toolkit. And so that was really important to me. So as much as I can learn from other leaders, as much as I can learn from various different experiences, I would just try to build my toolkit. So, and then I think the other thing too is, you know, one thing that I think really helped catapult my career was that I didn't allow myself to be put into a box. So I've done marketing, communications, business development, and then I did a whole shift and went in the people side of the business, right? In DE&I and people operations and learned that side of the business too. And then went and worked in corporate communications. So I kind of I never wanted to be, I could have looked at my career and said, I'm a marketer and that's what I do. And I just want to grow the ranks in marketing. And that would have been fine. But for me, it was, I'm not just a marketer, I'm a people connector, right? I'm a communicator. I'm all these different things that are transferable skills that can be used in various different disciplines. And so again, just building that toolkit, building those relationships, not allowing yourself to get stuck into one lane because there's so many different things that you can pull from your experiences that ultimately you never know where that can lead you to the next place. And so when I landed my last role where I was doing DE&I communications and corporate social responsibility communications for a large telecom company, it was because I had both the communications experience, the marketing experience, and the DE&I and the people operations, right? All of that kind of came together. So I think for me, that's really what's worked is just being open and staying curious and allowing myself to, step into new opportunities and possibilities, even when they seemed out of my realm or area of expertise.
There's a number of things to unpack there where you you're still curious and wanting to sort of move around in different parts of the business, which is interesting the way you talk about it. It's not I wanted to grow my skill set in a certain area. I wanted to learn the other parts of that business. And that's a different mindset. Because it is about like, how does the system operate and how can I work within it? And as a consequence, or not a consequence, as a reward, you grew
Mhm.
into different roles. So that's interesting. And I don't think enough people think about it that way in terms of how does this mechanism work? And then
Right.
how can I navigate that and then grow into my role? But what I've noticed in your story is that you were brave and you took different steps. So yes, you were a marketer, but you didn't stay in your lane.
Mhm.
So don't stay in your lane, ladies. That's the message here.
Yes. Yes. You don't have a lane. There is
There
no
is
lane.
no lane. And you sort of you navigated your way across all departments because you believed that one, you're curious, you wanted to learn, but that you could transfer those skills over into different areas. And I think that really reflects a transferring out of corporate now and really sort of removing the box altogether.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
tell us
because
about that playground you're working in now.
I think, you know what, I think when you start to even um find the courage to even just like open the box and say, I'm gonna step into this space, the more and more I did that, the braver I became. I think that's why I'm here today because I started to put myself, push myself out of this quote unquote box. And so finally I'm like, I've done all these things that, I'll say that my one thing my husband said when I was like contemplating, gosh, am I going to do this? Am I going to leave my job? I get so scared. He's like, there is nothing that you have done this far that whatever a new challenge, new opportunity, new experience, there's nothing that you put yourself out there to do that you have not been successful at. So, that really spoke to me because I'm like reflecting back on my career. I'm like, you know what, you're right. I had no idea. I mean, I had lived experience, right? From a D&I standpoint, I was a leader of an ERG. So I did have some knowledge, but to build an entire company 3-year D&I strategy from scratch, like I did that and I didn't have that experience. And then stepping into things like strategic projects for a entire people operations function in a company, and leading efforts like role scoping for an entire org, or helping to build a decision-making framework. Like those are things that I had no experience in doing, but I did it. And so, just even having that affirmation that I can do things regardless of feeling like I have all the puzzle pieces or all the knowledge I have, like I've done that before. So why not this? And I think that's what holds us back so often, is like we're waiting until that right time where I just got to learn this, or I just got to make sure I really, have this part of my business established. And it's like, no, you've got, I mean, and we learn that from coaching, right? Like that's the power of coaching, is helping people understand like you actually have all the answers you need inside of you. It's just digging deep to find that. And so for me, being able to move around allowed me to dig deep so that I could be brave enough to step out and take this leap.
Yeah, I love that. And what I've learned too is that, while you could see the big picture and you want, and it's sometimes scary, that big picture, it's
Yeah.
the one taking that one step
Mhm.
and then the next, the fog clears, right? And it just becomes easier the steps that you take. You don't have to solve for the whole thing now. You have to
Exactly.
solve for the first step, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be fun times for you because you're creating a whole new box. And I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. It said your growth zone is not your comfort zone. And
That's a good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
really resonated with me.
Yes.
Absolutely. So in terms of all the work that you've done and you've worked with a number of companies, what do you think companies can do better? But also, what do you think us as individual women can do better to grow our careers as leaders?
Yeah. I think from a company standpoint, I am such a human-centered leader, and that's why sometimes I felt like I didn't fit in those spaces, right? Because I just care so deeply about people. And I understand that, companies, it's a system. There's, you got to make a profit, obviously. Like I get that. But I do think there is still more opportunity for improvement when it comes to truly caring about the people. In order to truly care about the people, you have to listen to your people. Um, there's such, and I don't, haven't sat down and mapped out exactly how to solve for this. But the higher that you go up the leadership chain, the further removed you are from actually what's happening in the company. I actually heard something the other day where somebody kind of mentioned that. It was a podcast or something, but or no, it was a conference I just went to. And he was saying that leaders only know how the company works for them, right? So when you talk about there's a lack of psychological safety or a lack of growth and development, things like that. And then you have leaders at the top of the chain that are like, well, what do you mean? They're not seeing it. For them, that experience does not exist. But they're also not listening, right? So it's like I always talk about we talk about the employee experience and how employee sentiments, and you could take all the surveys you want in the world, but I'm always saying that the true employee experience and sentiment are the things that you hear at the water cooler that leaders typically don't hear, the things that our employees are saying back and forth. And until companies can really find a way to dig into that meaningfully and create a safe space for employees to actually bring those things to the fold, and then listen when they do, right? Don't dismiss it. Don't give the cookie cutter corporate jargon and, this is a great place to work and all the things that sound a lot like fluff. We've all heard it. But truly have meaningful dialogue with their employees about what they are truly experiencing, listen to understand and not to just dismiss or fluff over it. I think that is the missing point right now. When employees are saying that, we don't feel valued, when employees are saying that we are burnt out, like listen to that and then actually solve, right? Root cause analysis. That's always my thing is, a lot of times we try to solve for something and we don't even know where it stems from. We're solving for burnout because we think that I don't know, whatever we think the issue is as leaders, but actually the root cause is that people don't have clarity around their roles. Solve for that. And until you solve for that, people are going to continue to be burnt out. So again, it's understanding, it's listening to your employees and then truly digging into the root cause and then solving for that. And then in terms of individuals, as women, I think self-advocacy goes a long way. And that is something that I'll be honest, I did not really learn. And not that I won't say I didn't learn it, I don't feel like I felt safe or probably brave enough to really self-advocate until later in my career. But I think if women can do that earlier on to self-advocate, like, you know your worth, you know your value, speak up for that. I think part of that too is like we also have to give them the tools and the skills to do so, and really the knowledge. I know there's a lot of things that I did not know until I stepped into the people part of business. I didn't realize there were things like talent pools. I didn't realize how performance management worked. I didn't understand how promotion cycles worked. Companies, back to the company side of things, we need to arm people with those tools and that knowledge of how the people side of business truly works and how that plays into their growth and development. And that way women can better advocate for themselves. And I think secondly, as women individually, but collectively advocating for each other, right? Supporting each other, understanding how power and privilege works in the workplace and understanding that we all have some power and privilege. And so how do I use that to then advocate for the woman who may be needing that a little bit more? I think we can all play a role in that for sure.
Yeah. What you're sharing about, people not knowing the rules of the game almost, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so if you want to grow, if you want a salary increase, if you want a transition into another role, do you understand what that looks like from an HR perspective, from a people management perspective? And if you don't, then you don't know the rules you're playing with.
You don't? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And I don't think we have enough conversations about those things.
I don't think so.
And in general, I think people operate from, their center, right? What they're experiencing in the moment.
Mhm.
But when you're working within a system, you've got to learn how that system works. And there are, like you said, tools that you can arm yourself with to be more informed, and so your approach will be different.
100%. Yeah, I think I spent, reflecting back on it, I'm like, how much of my career did I spend where my career was just happening to me, right? Like I was not in the driver's seat. I was in the passenger seat. I had no idea, what was going on. I was just doing the things day to day to day on the hamster wheel churning, but I didn't know, you know, how to advocate for myself. I didn't know, like you said, the rules of the game. I was playing checkers, not chess, So and I believe there's probably so many women out there that just are doing all the things, they're turning their wheels and just don't have the tools or the background knowledge to truly advocate and be a voice for themselves.
What I found in some circles that I've been part of is that people aren't really given truthful feedback,
Hmm.
because sometimes that feedback isn't easy to give. Um, but even the person who's giving the feedback, sometimes they don't even think critically about what is the obstacle that person in front of them is facing and the information that's going to be so critical to them to navigate that obstacle. For example, articulating their value, right? And no one tells them like you really haven't shown us or spoken to us about all of the things that you have done in order to complete this project. All you've said is you completed the project,
Right.
right? And so walk us through that journey, walk us through the critical analysis that you had to take, walk us through the value of how you kept the company safe through this process. And I think that also is a thing that's lacking in this sort of candid communication with people. What's the crux of it that's holding you back? And it's my job to tell you so you can better navigate that environment. And I think that's a lack on both a leader's and an employer's side as also the employee side. Like they're not asking for critical feedback that's actually going to make a difference. And when someone tells you something, clarify so
Yeah.
you understand what the next step is going to look like to make it different for you. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I just think, yeah, feedback is hard all the way around. I mean, it makes people uncomfortable and it's, we're human. Nobody wants to, quote unquote, deliver, what could be perceived as bad news or, hurt somebody's feelings. And, you know, I remember a manager once told me, she's like, as she was describing feedback, she said feedback, because everybody says feedback is a gift. And sometimes that sounds like, oh, it's not really a gift to be told that I'm not doing my job appropriately. But I love what she said about feedback being a doorway. If we both walk into it together, we'll be better on the other side of it, because feedback really is a two-way street. Like, as me as a leader, if I'm giving somebody feedback, like, I should be gaining something out of that as well, right? Like, because it's going to make us better together as a collective. So I never view feedback, and anybody that I've, coached or managed, like, that's always what I try to get to them. Like, we're a collective unit. So, and we can't be our best selves and be our best team unless we're both being open and honest with each other. And obviously, not in a harsh way, but like, be real with me. If I'm not, giving you what you need as a leader, like, I need you to tell me that. Like, it's so critical to my own growth, and it's critical to the way that I show up and support you. And that should go both ways. But, because I think it makes folks so uncomfortable, like, they either don't give it, or when they do, it's very, for lack of better words, fluffy, or just, it's not really constructive. It's like, well, yeah, this missed the mark, but like, what is that? What is the mark? Have you told me what the mark is first and foremost? And how did this miss it? So yeah, I think just getting more granular and really specific with feedback is a game changer for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it changed for me when I heard the phrase "Claire is kind." I cannot tell
Hmm.
you where I learned it from, but
Thanks,
that
Brene
would
Brown.
what
Thanks, Brene Brown.
probably
Yeah, yeah.
was, yeah. When I heard that phrase, I thought I'm doing that person a disservice if I'm not
Mhm.
clear. Because it is in service to them and their growth when I provide clear and honest feedback. And again, not to hurt anyone's feelings, and it's not what you say, is how you say it. And my grandmother always said that. So you can deliver that feedback with kindness to help that person grow.
Yeah. And I think too, the thing that makes it challenging for some folks, especially because I know I was here too, because we put these leaders on a pedestal too. So you think that, oh God, these leaders all the way up to CEO have it all figured out. And it's like, no, they're getting feedback too. Like, everybody needs feedback. So when I start to really realize that, like, everybody up the chain is getting feedback, they're having tough conversations, they're not doing everything right. Like, I think that also opened me up to, like, okay, feedback is not something that is just, you know, um, just something personal to me, right? Like, we're all growing. So, and I'm no different, like, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've taught us a number of lessons that you've learned through your career. So I will ask you, as a young person listening to this, what would be some of the strategic advice that you would share with her to help her grow in her career?
Yeah, I would say number one, know your values and know your value.
Mm,
That was something that I probably wish I would have really thought about or knew, stood firm in earlier in my career. I think as women, like, sometimes we just don't really, it probably wasn't until recently where I really set with my values. Like, what are my values, right? What are the things I truly value in a workplace, in life, in my relationships? And be willing to stand firm in your values and know that if you are in an environment that is not aligned to your values, that you have a choice, and that's okay. You can make that choice. But know your values first and foremost, because I think there's always this, it's a very conflicted feeling internally when you may not know exactly what it is, but you feel it. When you're in a place, in an environment that is not aligned to your values, whether or not you can really call it out for what it is, I guarantee you feel it. Something is not right. Something does not sit well with you. It's hard for you to sleep at night. It's hard for you to show up at work every day. It just doesn't feel, as much as you may love the work, there may be people there that you love, there's just something that's not right. Like, it's just a feeling, and I can't even really describe it, but I know it when I feel it because I felt it before. So know your values, because that's going to make it's going to make it easier for you to identify when you're in a place that does not serve you, and that you cannot grow and thrive in. And then secondly, know your value, right? So if you, in a workplace, sometimes you can get in situations where, you are, um, again, that feeling of like, I know I'm giving, 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 and I'm not receiving. I know I'm looking around me and I know I'm running circles around everybody around me. And, but yet they're all at higher levels than I am. No by experience. Clearly I'm not being valued here the way I am. And then you advocate for yourself. And if that's not met with, if you're still not seen, then again, you can make that choice for yourself. But you have to start by at least knowing your values and know your value because that makes that advocacy, that self-advocacy, that much more powerful. I think the second one would be to prioritize relationships. Like I said before, like relationships um, can be the catalyst for so many things in your career. Just those authentic connections. Like I said, I've learned from a lot of great leaders, and I've also learned from some not great leaders, right? I've learned about the leader that I don't want to be from those leaders as well. And those relationships were just as valuable because again, every relationship I'm learning something from. And you also want to build relationships because you want people to speak your name in rooms when you're not there, right? That's the difference between we talk about mentorship versus sponsorship, right? Sponsorships are the people that are speaking your name into the room that can advocate for you for when you're not there. Like that's why relationships are so important because as much as we want to say that, promotions happen just because of the great work that you're doing, it's corporate America. Relationships also matter, right? So that is the reality. And then third, I would say back to my previous notion about like just not putting yourself in a box, just continuing to learn and fill your toolkit. It's so important. Even if you think, gosh, that role, it doesn't sound like the most greatest, whatever, or that project doesn't sound like the greatest things. Guess what? There may be a new relationship that you establish there that it's going to get you to a role that you truly want. Or there could be something that you pick up that you're like a quick example. So at a previous role, I had to undertake this huge role scoping project. And if you know me, I'm a creative. That did not sound fun to me. Figuring out what everybody's roles and responsibilities were did not sound appealing at all. But I learned so much from that that when I went into my next role as a people leader, on a leads team who were struggling with, an issue of lack of role clarity, I was able to bring in that knowledge that I had from doing that exercise to say, like, hey, this is critically important and this is how we can go about doing this. So there's just different things, like even if it's not something that ultimately want to do for the rest of your life, what can you use from that moment in time or from that experience or from that project or from that role that will help, again, build your toolkit for what's coming next?
I wonder if you can talk to us about when you're in that place where you're highly uncomfortable and you're thinking, what am I doing here? I hate this project. How do you self-manage and think about the benefits that may come from that? How do you manage in that moment?
Mm. Yeah, I think giving yourself just a lot of just grace to, feel those feelings. Like it's okay. Like there have been times where I did not enjoy what I was doing, right? Or that it was just really hard and just, you know, um, the work wasn't meaningful to me. And so giving myself grace to like feel that, like it's okay for me not to be loving this. It doesn't mean that I won't still be able to grow from it. And like I'm not again in this box in this container for the rest of my life. Like I'm passing through, like my sister says, she's like, I'm just trying to be there for a good time, not a long time. And sometimes that's what it is. Like you're just there for a good time. But also still finding the things outside of because work is not our life, right? And remembering that too, like this is work. This is what I do right now. This is not who I am. I can still find other things to bring me joy as I'm passing through this period that I may not be finding joy in my day-to-day work, 9 to 5 or whatever that those hours are, but I can still continue to find joy outside of that to get me through this good time and not a long time.
Um, that really resonates and reminds me of a dinner I had recently with my husband, and both of us were having a really difficult week. And it was tough week for him. And we came home on Friday and he brought dinner in and he put on some music and there was a glass of wine. And in that moment, I realized that week was the background noise.
Mm,
It wasn't the center of our lives. It was work.
yeah.
What we were doing in that moment is our life. And yeah, it's really important to put things in perspective that could help you move along until you get to another place, until you get to another project. And then when you reflect on that project, then you do like, hindsight is 2020, right? Then you see all the like really good learnings that you got through it.
Yeah.
But to get through to that other place, you really do need to pace yourself and manage your perspectives, right?
Mhm. Perspective is so like I'm a huge perspective is everything. I have conversations with my kids about that too. When something is the end of the world, as it typically is for teenagers and kids, I preach about perspective. Like just think, put this in the perspective of your entire life, or put this in the perspective of all your years in high school, or whatever that is. Like getting them to see the bigger picture, and it's hard. Like when we're going through rough patches, like sometimes perspective, like I still struggle with it today, can be challenging. But that is really, I mean, that is the key. It's like understanding like this is a piece of my journey. This is not everything. This is what I'm doing in this moment. Again, this is not who I am. And really, like I said, putting that into perspective, understanding the bigger picture. And then also just maybe even, what are the goals? What are the takeaways that I want to take from this moment in time? And knowing that again, this is something that I'm just passing through. I'm going to leverage, how am I going to still leverage this in the bigger picture of my story? Because I guarantee you there's some kind of nugget, that you can take from each piece of your journey that will fuel, the next path forward.
And that's what it is, right? It's a beautiful human journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to not always feel great about it, but there are going to be good things when we start reflecting on that. But it is a journey.
It's
And the growth zone is not the comfort zone. So you're not always going to be comfortable along that
Mhm.
journey,
Yeah,
right?
you can't be. Yes, that's growth happens when you're, uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? Like if I'm in the gym, like growth and growth is when you're like at your wit's end and you feel like you can't lift any more weight. Like that's when actually you're building muscle, right? So when you stretch yourself, like that is when the growth really happens. And if you can remember that, like, okay, this sucks, but I'm probably like growing, I'm probably getting something from this. It sucks in the moment, but yeah, on the other side of this, there's going to be something that I'm taking from it.
Yeah. And our younger colleagues, I hope that's helpful to you because the need to build resilience
Hmm.
is so important. You don't ghost things, you don't give up
Hmm.
because that edge that you're dealing with and you're rubbing up against is the growth. And on the other side of that, you're going to be better off for it. So not to suffer through things, not
No.
not when it's
Mm-mm.
unbearable, but certainly when it's uncomfortable and it's stretching you, know that that's offering you an opportunity for growth. So we'll leave that with you. So how did you get so smart? What books, what resources, what things are you doing that we can learn from you?
Ooh, yes, and all my free time, what am I doing? Um, So I actually read a really great book recently by Adrienne Marie Brown. Like she's a really great social justice warrior, an advocate into like equity, space, DE&I. But her book is called Emergent Strategy. And I actually read it during our coaching program because it was, one of the resources I wanted to kind of use for my coaching practice. But I just love the way that she looks at change and not just change from, yes, an organizational standpoint, a world change standpoint, but also internally, like how we change within ourselves. And it's just a great book for anybody who wants to again have a different perspective on change in life. And one of the things that I love that she says in her book that I now kind of use with my clients is talking about the power of being like water. Like water moves through things, it moves over things, it's a container for things, it lifts things, and it really is encouraging people to be adaptable and to be fluid. And I think when we can really learn that skill, that, life is constantly changing around us. There's so much change always happening. And just how can we just approach life like water? Like it's okay, it's fluid. it's happening. I got it, right? I can hold it in, I can let it go, I can move along with it, I can, all the things. And so that's a powerful book. I love anything Brene Brown and just any kind of women empowerment, Black women centered podcast. I think that's really important for me for sure. And I feel like there was a book that I started the other day, and now I can't remember what it was. That's horrible. I'm sure it'll come to me later on. But yeah, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Murray Brown. I definitely recommend that to anyone and everyone.
So I'm going to list that at the end of our podcast. So in terms of continuing to learn from you and keeping up with all the things that you're doing, how can people follow you?
Yeah, so you can look for me on LinkedIn, Myisha Boyd. Um, you can follow Rock Paper Scissors Consulting on LinkedIn as well. We also have an Instagram page, as well as a Facebook page, I believe, and our website, rpscmovement.com is actually launched in kind of the soft launch phase, but I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. We're still working on it, still in development, but it is live if you want to go check us out on there. And it'll have a link to my Calendly so you can set up some time with me if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or communications, DE&I consulting, or if you're a nonprofit leader and you need some help with like digital advocacy work, like we would love to hear from you.
So thank you. Thank you, Maisha, for being here today. We've learned so much. Great conversation as always when you and I sit down.
Yes, always. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I've missed this, so thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, everyone, that's it for us today. And stay around. We will bring you another episode soon, and we will continue the conversation. Thank you.